Okay. I think that's a little bit louder. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My daughter was just playing here, helping me set up, so I don't even know what kind of one of these dolls is. But welcome to my studio. My name is Michael Markowsky. We are going to be making another painting by another one of my favorite artists. Today is the final day of Vincent Van Gogh week. So, surprise, we're going to be making another Vincent Van Gogh painting today. This time we're going to be making a self-portrait by Van Gogh, or of Van Gogh by Van Gogh. And let's just bring up the image itself on the screen. When it arrives, here is the painting that we are going to be painting today. This is, I think, one of the most important self-portraits he did because it really shows him at a turning point in his career. This painting was made, I think, in September 1887, so about 2.5 years before he died. And really, this is one of the most, this is really one of the first paintings where we see his iconic style on full display. And we're going to look at some of the self-portraits he did before this and after this, and I think you'll see that it almost kind of stands out from amongst all of them here. So this is, I think, a really important painting of his, a significant self-portrait of his, which I think is also a really beautifully done self-portrait. And I think it's happening all at a particular moment in time where he's living in Paris. He's living, I think, at this time with his brother, and things are getting pretty tense. And eventually, in about 4 or 5 months from here, he moves down to Arles in the south of France, and everything starts to kind of unwind from there, leading towards his death 131 years ago exactly today. So today is an auspicious day in the history of Van Gogh. It's not great cause to celebrate him, but it's an acknowledgement of the unfortunate, untimely passing of this great artist. Anyway, let's get into it, because I'm so excited to paint today's painting, because we've been focusing on other famous images by Van Gogh, and we've yet to do his portrait. Now, I have currently, we're going to start off with a blank canvas and an image that we can work from. I'm going to use a little bit of it, and then I'm going to show you probably the techniques that he would have used to create this image on the canvas. So there's an outline, which is this outline right here, which I did on my iPad Pro using the Procreate app. Not as a product placement, I mentioned that, but just as because people will ask me, how do you do these outlines? Is it a computer effect? No, it takes me, 20, 30, 40 minutes, an hour and a half, depending on how complex the image is. And it's all there for free for you to download if you like and transfer it onto the canvas. So why don't we do that exact thing at this exact next moment right here. So here's my canvas. Oh, actually, you know what? I just want to show you, before we jump into that, where you can find that image if you want to get this. So there's a Dropbox link in the description below, and if you look in this Dropbox link, it'll show you all the other artists that we've painted. The Mona Lisa by Leonardo da Vinci, all these great names of major artists. And if you don't recognize some of these names, doing what we're doing today is a great way to get acquainted with them. We're going to go right down here to Vincent Van Gogh, as it's correctly pronounced, but we'll call him Vincent Van Gogh for it's probably most commonly known. Again, just as a quick little shout out on Sunday, just a few days from now, we're going to do a special Spider-Man painting by Steve Ditko, who was the creator of the look of Spider-Man. Stan Lee is obviously the most famous comic book creator of all time. He's the creator of he wrote the stories for Spider-Man and Iron Man, the X-Men, you know, the Hulk, and so on and so forth. But Steve Ditko was the one who came up with the look of Spider-Man. So, and like a lot of, we've talked about a few of these people before, you know, who've been paired with a writer and the illustrator often meets some sort of untimely demise or dies in poverty or obscurity. Steve Ditko is a similar sort of character in comic book history who, he's an interesting figure, so we'll talk a little bit about that. And also, just before we jump right into the painting, there's a private Facebook group just for people who are painting along with me, and I encourage you to upload your version of today's painting to the group here, and then once a month we'll take a look at the work and I'll give you feedback on it, and it's a good cause to celebrate great work. So here's even just paintings from yesterday. We did the Cafe Terrace at Night, also by Van Gogh. Here's Stefan's version. Wow, cool. And then there's their Potato Eaters, which we did on Monday. Awesome. Gail. Look at that, Gail. Cool. I'm not going to look at them too close. Wow, Paula. Josh. Lots of stuff here. And then people posting other fun stuff related. There's Gail's version of the bedroom, which we did just a couple days ago. Anyway, let's get right into it. I'll just mention just off the top here. Again, Vincent Van Gogh, born 1853, died today is the actual anniversary of it, July 29th, 1890, at age 37. We'll go into his biography here in a second. Maybe I'll just take a couple seconds just to mention his, just a little bit about the self-portraits that Van Gogh did. I think it's, you know, right off the top here, they talk about how most of, you know, he's painting these images in the mirror. So if you want to get an idea of what Picasso, or right now I'm putting together the Picasso week in October, so I have Picasso on the brain. But as I look at this here, Van Gogh, if you want to know what Van Gogh really looked like, take your painting, hold it up to a mirror, and you will see what, you know, because often artists, you might see the part on one side of their hair, or one eye's bigger or smaller, or the nose, whatever. And it can be a little bit strange when you see it in the mirror, like, oh, that's actually what they would have looked like. What we're seeing is their reversed image in the mirror. Anyway, let's just take a quick look. Oh, I just thought that would kind of blow up nicely. Maybe let's stretch that out. There we go. So you can just see, look at how dark some of these early paintings are that he did. So they're using much more of the classical approach to painting. You see, he started painting really around this time, 1886, which is only like 5 years or so before he died. Actually, he started maybe 1882 is when he just sort of dedicated himself to making art. But these portraits really begin around that time. He made 43 of them over the course of his short career as an artist. And so we're seeing growing experimentation here, right? Growing experimentation with his brushstrokes. And then he's in Paris. He's moved from where he was in Antwerp before that. Then he moves to Paris. And then so here's today's painting right here. And it's almost like it's a bit of a shock compared to some of the other ones, which look a little bit awkward, right? His early ones, like they show some talent as a classical painter, experimenting. These are the kind of things I see all the time at the university I teach at, my students are making, because he would have still been just refining his craft, right? And they're pretty awkward. And then we come to today's painting, and it's like, whoa, where did that come from? How did he learn to do that? That's cool. And then you could see he kind of still a little bit of struggle going on here. You often paint it on the back side of a painting. So here's, you know, this is the same painting, but this is the painting on the back side of it. And then so all of 1887 here. There's all these kind of awkward paintings, and not really again until he's in Arles right here, where you could see, like, look at the changing color too. Like, there's more color in some of these paintings, but boom, look at the backgrounds, getting greens and reds, blues. Wow, boom. So, and then a few of these, in fact, this painting right here, we're gonna paint that in January when we do our most expensive paintings of the world series. So stick around for that. Okay, so let's get this painting onto the canvas. I'm going to do a very quick outline, like maybe 2 or 3 minute version of the outline, because what I want to do is, rather than focusing on the drawing, I want to show you a little bit about how Van Gogh probably painted not only just his portraits, but also his, I would say would be his method of just generally approaching a painting. So we're going to cheat just a little bit, and I say cheat because that's probably what a lot of people would say. Personally, I think whatever tool you can use as an artist to help you get a little closer to your vision, go right for it. So I'm just going to do a quick outline. I'm using this carbon paper, and carbon paper is something you should be able to find at any art supply store or fabric store. So if you can't find it, there's also an Amazon link in the description below. So I'm just going to do kind of rough outline of the eyes, mouth. I just want to have basically the composition in place here. Now it's going to be, you know, the way that I'm going to demonstrate this, obviously he may have done a few small lines like this on canvas, on the canvas, I'm not sure, but the next steps we will see will probably be close to what we would have seen had you entered into his studio 133 years ago. Okay, so real quick outline. Boom, just like that on the page. That's all we really need for this painting. Right, here's my carbon paper again. I can reuse that carbon paper probably another 8 or 9 times, I would say. I've used it about, I don't know, another 8 or 9 already. So I should be able to get about 15 to 20, depending on how detailed my images are. So I might just keep that out for reference purposes while I'm painting. So most of the time Vincent is painting, well, he would sort of paint on whatever was available, but his brother was supporting him. His brother was literally giving him about 15% of his annual salary. Just his brother Theo was you know, sending Van Gogh checks as often as he could, so that Van Gogh didn't starve to death, because I think his brother was probably pretty concerned that if he didn't help him, that Van Gogh would literally just wither away. Anyway, so I'm just going to put some warm yellow on the canvas, as I typically do every painting, just to kind of get started here. Let's just get a bit of water on there and quickly stir it up just to dilute it a little bit. It's a little bit, just need a tiny bit more water just to thin it out a little bit more. Okay, let's do this. So sometimes, you know, artists might do this even before, you know, if you were like Van Gogh, if you were going to leave your studio and go for a walk around town and search for a composition to paint, you probably would get your canvas primed up. You would have it stretched over a frame, and you might apply usually a warm ground. So Van Gogh probably, if he did this at all, he probably would have used maybe a little bit of a darker color, like a brown, to do this, brownish yellow. I'm using this bright yellow because I love the effect, and it's just really easy to. We're not even thinking about mixing paint at the beginning of one of these sessions. We're just launching right in. Okay. So just a little bit cleaner surface. And maybe I'll get another. Where are all my rags? I think they just keep getting pushed around and. Oh, there they are. Already got some out here. Okay. I like to just have things a little bit organized before we go. Let's put some paint on the palette as well. So let's move this temporarily off to the side. It can finish drying. It hopefully should be dry in about 2 to 3 minutes. If not, I'll just use a bit of warm air from the blow dryer. I'm so used to wearing like my painting clothes that there are times where I'm upstairs and I'm cooking. I was just making some lunch for our daughter, and I just find myself like wiping grease on my t-shirt, and I go, whoa, like, you're not painting. I've been doing so much painting lately that I'm kind of just always in painting mode these days. So there we go. Let's get some white on here. Okay, and I don't think we're going to use any black. If we just look at the painting, I don't see any black in there at all, which is not surprising. Van Gogh was known as a post-impressionist painter, although he was friends with some impressionist artists. When he painted this painting, he was spending a lot of time with another artist, Paul Signac, and because he's living in Paris, he's surrounded by a lot of really well-known artists. His brother is a very well-known art dealer at the time who's going around introducing Van Gogh to all of these great artists. But Signac was, in fact, let's just take a second just so you can have an idea of so this is the guy that Van Gogh is palling around with in Paris, right? At the time he made this painting. So you can imagine Van Gogh before that is making kind of a little bit darker paintings. You know, just a few years before that, he painted the Potato Eaters, right? Which we did this painting of just a few days ago. So let's put this. Like, this is the painting he made about 1.5 years before he gets to Paris, right? So you can imagine that somebody who made this painting, who's now finding himself wandering around Paris with a guy who is making Yeah, I think Signac was making paintings sort of like that at this time. I don't know exactly his biography, but you can imagine then what kind of effect hanging around a pointillist painter would have on Van Gogh, and how we get from point A to point B, right? So I just find that kind of really fascinating, and I love learning about the history of art because it brings the art itself to life, right? It all of a sudden makes, oh, now this makes so much sense. Because, there's this idea that Van Gogh just sort of came out of nowhere, and he was just this genius who figured it out all on his own. He was surrounded by people who were exploring similar ideas with color than he was. Okay, so I'm just going to finish. I'm going to blow dry this just to speed up the drying process. I'll mute the microphone for a couple seconds, and we'll begin the actual painting itself. Okay, so what we have now is we've got our painting that's got a nice warm ground on it. I think a warm ground is preferable to a cold ground or cool ground whenever possible. It's just going to help give the painting a bit of a brighter, warmer glow. I always kind of link it to like a Kodachrome photo look, or like an Instagram warming filter, all of which tend to be kind of on vogue right now. I like to think that I have my own ideas of things, but maybe I'm just a product of my particular time, right? So anyway, you could put, as I said, like a warm brown on here, but that would be probably good enough. Okay, so now I'm just gonna get, let's see, a small paintbrush out, and I want to try to simulate a little bit of how Van Gogh would have created this painting. We can probably just try to ignore these lines that are here, and we're going to imagine that I'm Van Gogh and I'm looking at my face in the mirror, and we'll try to so he probably, if we're looking, let's actually just take a quick look at the painting itself and just see if we could see evidence, so you're like making this stuff up on the spot. Can we see any of the lines that he might have put down first onto the canvas? So if I'm looking here, actually it does look like there might be a little bit of pencil. Do you see these? That looks like a pencil line maybe underneath there, or that could be a light brush stroke. Not exactly sure, but we see this red line under here, and we can also see there's brush strokes covering it that are on top of it. So that tells us it was done before some of those dots that we see in the background. We also see a lot of those red lines above his head that have been subsequently covered up. Now looks like he put some red back on top later on, but if I was to take an educated guess, I have pretty full confidence to say that the color that we want to put down to start this painting is a dark red, a crimson red. Okay, so let's take our paintbrush, and I'm gonna I'll mix it with a little bit larger brush. So I'm gonna take some warm red, mostly because the image we're painting is in the foreground, and we're taking just a little bit of cool red to give it a bit more of a magenta-ish quality. And I'm just going to take a bit of warm blue, not too much of it. I'm just going to put it to the side here. Okay. So this kind of gets us fairly close to the color that he used for that initial layer of paint. I might need to mix a little bit more, we'll see. Okay. So he probably painted this painting, like a lot of his paintings, on an easel, so probably would have been something like that. And ideally, if you're painting your own self-portrait, what you want to be doing is having your, let's just imagine that the camera is a mirror, right? What you're looking, the camera filming me is a mirror. So what I would want to do is have my canvas as close to my field of vision as possible, so that when I can look at the mirror and then look at the canvas without really moving my head. I can just sort of go back and forth, right? You can see my eyes just shifting left and right, right? Because if I was to try to do my self-portrait, let's say again, that's the mirror and my canvas is on the ground now, what I would have to be doing is I look at my face, then I have to capture it into my memory, tilt my head down, paint for a little bit, lose my train of thought here, look back up, take another quick mental picture, come down, right? So there's a lot of, in that up and down motion, I'm sort of losing the image a little bit. So if possible, you want that right as close to your, and this is the same thing when, because I teach figure drawing at Emily Carr University here in Vancouver. It's like the best art school in Canada. This is the same sort of thing. We'll have easels, and students will stand right next to them, and the model will be as directly behind the canvas as possible. If you really like painting on a flat surface, which I do as well, then what you would do is you could have your mirror kind of next to you, positioned up like that. The only thing is instead the image you're going to create is going to sort of look like you were looking down. So it's almost like as if somebody was standing above you and you're taking a picture above. So you might get a little bit more chin action going down there. Your face, you know, the weight of your skin is going to cause your face to droop a little bit. So just be mindful that what you see in the mirror and where the mirror is going to radically affect the view. Anyway, let's take some paint, get it on our brush, and let's go. So again, I'm going to pretend that I have a mirror, that I'm Van Gogh and I'm looking in the mirror, and I just have my paintbrush. And let's get, this view here. Actually, let's get both of them side by side. Right? And so really quickly, what he would be doing is probably starting, well, what I usually do is maybe start with an eyes, getting that in place. So just really quickly starting to lay in the shape of the face. Right, so I would probably, this is exactly how I would start, is just getting your eyes in there. Right, and then I might think, okay, if this eye is here, then the ears over here. Really quick. Now, I did an entire 40 episode how to draw course here on YouTube. You can download it for free, watch it at your convenience. Many people who are watching right now have taken that class and thoroughly enjoyed it and found it really useful for creating their paintings. You know, sometimes people think, why, I just want to paint, why should I even take a drawing class? And especially if you want to paint, you know, if you're just following along painting with me and you have the template, oh, well, that's fine. But if you want to start creating your own paintings, in fact, I'm just going to, like, remember you saw there, his hair went really wild. I'm going to paint that up there because that's what he did. So let's get that crazy wild hair. It looks like he, as he was painting it, he kind of, tempered things down a little bit. All right, so once you've got that in place, then you're quickly putting in, you know, the clothing. Is there anything in the, do we see hands or anything? So I bet you that's what he would have done, and he probably would have done that relatively fast. Although, you know, most, like, it's to get that done, you want it to be precise. So he might have had like an eye up here, and he was like, no, I gotta move that eye, move it down here. Maybe the nose was over here, and then he's like, no, I'm gonna move the nose over there. Right? Maybe this ear was originally here, and he decided, no, I gotta move it over. You know, maybe the outside of the face was over here, right? So this is the place, you know, maybe the hairline was lower, all these different kinds of things, the shoulder, maybe it was too high. This is where you're moving things around on the canvas. And then once you get kind of you're closer to where you want things to be, then you might kind of just go around, maybe darken things down a little bit. Kind of, okay, I'm going to reshape my hair a bit, and the beard. Okay, I feel like I'm happy with that, right? And let's get the shoulder. I'm going to just put that there. There we go. So that would probably be closer to the first maybe 25 minutes or so of his painting process. Wow, such a quiet chat today. Usually the chat's quite busy. Okay. So I'm just going to wash off these brushes, and we're going to get started on the next step. He was painting in oil paint at the time too, so these would have been fairly thin, transparent layers of paint with a lot of turpentine in it, so it dries really fast. Turpentine is alcohol-based, so it would, if you've ever used turpentine, you spill it on your table, and it'll evaporate faster than water, right? So, and it also has a bit of a stinky smell. Okay. So we got that down. Let's now think about the rest of the painting. What do we want to do here? Well, I think the background looks like it's a cool blue, and we got cool reds and or cool greens and orange here. So let's just kind of catapult right into the painting that background. I'm not sure what color he would have used, but I think it's probably a cool blue. And just for the sake of argument, I'm just going to take the cool blue right out of the tube, and I'm just going to paint it onto our background here. Right, we just want to fill in this space as quickly as possible. Right, and here's where he's kind of maybe like trimming that wild hair down. Okay, so we've got that in. Next, down here, we might be fine with this warm yellow on his jacket as I'm looking at it. So then let's actually, oops. Looking at his face, see if we see any hints of what's in below there. I don't know if I see any. It looks like he's worked this surface a lot. There's a lot of color on here. So what is the color that I think I'm going to put down? I think what I'm going to do is do what I would imagine he might have done. Again, I don't know for sure. It's not like I have a time machine that I can jump into before any of these episodes. But I would be almost willing to wager that he put down an orange on here, because he's using, at this time, he's really interested, like Signac, in these strong oppositions of color, and the Impressionists, especially the post-Impressionist painters, really fell in love with a particular method of painting, which is using opposing colors on the color wheel. So if we paint a cold blue down here, as we've just done for the background, what you might want to think about doing is applying a warm blue, or warm orange, sorry. So you got a cool blue, putting a warm orange right next to it. And that's going to create a very intense juxtaposition of color. So let's take our warm yellow, the same color we did for this whole background. In fact, so before I even mix this paint, I'm just going to go back over top of his jacket here. Okay, and then I'm going to take some warm red, and I'm going to mix this in here. And I'm just going to paint this, I'm going to go right over the face. I'm even going to go over the top of the hair too. And you might accidentally, you know, if some of this red paint that we painted in there, or even the blue, gets mixed into your color, all right, don't worry about it. All right, so there's a little bit of blue there. Okay, so I'd be willing to, I would be pretty confident saying that that could have been pretty close to what this painting looked like 132 years ago. So let's just, I'm going to wash a few brushes here before we move on. I wonder if, because it's I know here in Vancouver it's really hot. It wouldn't surprise me if it's really hot elsewhere, and people are like, oh, I don't know if I want to make a painting today. I might just sit next to the air conditioner for a while and then paint this painting later on tonight. I cannot blame you. Okay. So let's take a look at the painting itself here and think about what we can do next. I'll let the orange on the face dry. Let's just start thinking about the color on this background. I think I'm going to go over top of this blue again with more of the same cool blue, and then I think I'm going to take that same red that we use down here, and I'm going to start going over the jacket, I think. We'll see. I'm not exactly sure, but so I'm going to take my cool blue, and actually I'm going to take a bit of cool yellow, just mix that here. And you know, I'm just going to blow dry this just so if I try painting over top of the wet paint, it's just going to actually peel that paint right off. So let's just mute this. Okay, I see in the chat there, Heidi chimes in. Hi, Michael. Hi, everyone. I love this portrait, but I have 3 unfinished Van Gogh paintings from the last 3 days, and I've run out of clean palettes, I will watch your other videos and I'll check back later. Have fun. That's probably a few people who are in that same situation playing a little bit of catch up. So okay, so now I've got a little bit of green on this blue with some cool yellow mixed in. Just going in here. Let's take a bit more. The goal is not to get like a perfect flat color in the background like we've done in some other paintings. It's just to establish a good foundation under there. Okay, and then I think as we go back here, I'm going to add a bit of warm red, and we're going to darken that a little bit. So let's just continue. I'm going to take more of this blue, get some of this red on here. Let's take a tiny bit of warm red into this mixture, and that will darken this color. If we add a lot more warm red into this color, it will basically make a black. So you just want to be kind of careful not to put in too much paint in there. Okay. Cool. I think that's everything I wanted to do there. Maybe. Doesn't matter. Okay, I'm just going to wipe off the excess paint. I might even, you know, while I'm right here, I could imagine him doing something like this. Taking this same color that he just painted the background with, and then just maybe going back over some of these lines again. I don't know if he did this, but it's this idea of building up oppositional colors is a big part of what he's exploring at the time. So I'm going to do it as well. Okay. Great. Now I think what I'm going to do is let's maybe start building up a little bit of color on the jacket down here. So I'm just going to take, well, let's just take the same color that I was just painting with, and he's got this jacket here. Let's start seeing. I'm just going to kind of the lines that he's putting down aren't just random lines. He's trying to use these lines to, you can almost imagine like a sculptor chiseling a piece of marble, and that these are like, you know, hammer strokes with the chisel. Like, this is my hammer, and you got your chisel, and you're going around a shape. Right? So it's the same sort of thing here, right? Trying to describe, you know, the wrinkles of the clothing. And you can imagine, you know, you need to build up quite a inventory of paint on here to so that this yellow is almost disappears in the next part of the painting. So that might be. Let's see. Put a bit more here. Okay. Now I think he's using some green, so let's take a bit more of this cool yellow, mix it into the blue here. And I think there's tons of like green dots and dashes. Let's take, I mean, there's green kind of everywhere, so I'm just gonna, remember, we want to kind of almost completely hide the yellow that is on the canvas right now. So when you're doing this, you're trying to go in between the, let's just focus that, there we go, and let's, so let's say even if we are in here, we're sort of alternating in between all of this. The blue, we're going to put red over top of all of this shortly as well. So Signac, like his fellow pointillist painter Georges Seurat, they did most of their paintings with like little dots, like this. So, and we'll see more of that in the background. Now, just for the sake of speed, I'm probably just gonna speed this process up and not do too many tiny little marks. But I can almost see in this painting too Van Gogh being a bit impatient and just trying to fill it up as quickly as possible himself. Alright, so just dab, 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 dab. And especially in the early stages of this painting, just go fast. Like don't worry about making any of this look pretty, because if you do that, then you're going to be much less likely to you're going to be too cautious and worried about ruining it when you put in the red and the blue and the brown over top of this same in between, yeah, over top of some of this green, right? Now, it looks like he did kind of, his was a little bit wild like this, like he wasn't being too cautious. And I imagine Signac seeing that would be like, well, you know, like, I think you should maybe slow down and be a little bit more careful the way you apply paint. And Van Gogh, yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I just, you know, like, I want to get like 5 paintings done this week, and I just don't have time for it. So, Okay. Now, next, let's take that same color we had before, which is this warm, or it's kind of a how did we make this? This was our warm red. Gotta put a bit of cool red in here. And a bit of cool blue as well, right? Okay. And then, where should we start, maybe? So you can go quickly, but again, you want to think about keeping little spaces in between, or painting in between the existing paint strokes. Like you see, there's blue and red, blue, blue, red, blue, 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 right? So you're trying to cover up the white on the canvas. So if you can do this quickly, then that's great. If you need to go a little bit slower, that's great too. Doesn't have to be super precise. And we can also put other, I think there's going to be a bit of warm blue. It looks like there's some purple right in here, which is warm blue and cool red. So we'll just move over to the other side of the body here. Alright, so we got dots and then longer dashes. And with each sort of passing layer, don't try to fill it completely up. We don't want to get rid of all of the yellow and turn it into just a blob. We want to try to, you know, leave little hints coming through here. Okay, same sort of thing. This almost looks like he's doing a shadow underneath that blue there. As you're doing this, just keep in mind you may get some big areas of texture where you've got these big peaks of wet paint, and so it might mean you have to be a little bit careful when we're doing other things like the face later on, that we might get a little bit of paint elsewhere. Like, I guess probably the smarter thing for me to do would have been to do the face first and this jacket second. The reason why I've gone right to the jacket first is I think it might be just for people that are kind of maybe new to Van Gogh's process. Painting this jacket is a good place for us to practice, is long story short, right? Where, you know, if you mess up on a couple of the dots on the jacket while you're learning how to do little spots and dots and dashes and small lines, yeah, you're gonna be like, oh, okay, well, whatever, it's just the jacket. If I were to do this and you're doing this on the nose and you're like, whoa, I don't know what I'm doing here, then it probably could lead to that catastrophic meltdown, and maybe you're gonna go cut your own ear off in frustration. Okay. So there's still more density of marks to come in here. I think it's almost like a little bit of lighter pink happening, maybe more green. I do think the red was the final color to go on top of here, but that's okay. We can always put more red on there afterwards. I think I'll leave that for, well, I think I might do a little bit more of that green now that I'm looking at it. I'm going to do a bit of a darker green. So this is my warm red, my cool blue and cool yellow. It's almost like the color that we did for the top right corner here. So I'm really kind of just searching for big areas of yellow. I'm just gonna, like, you can almost kind of squint your eyes when you're doing this. Where's the, like whack-a-mole or something, right? You're like, boom, there's yellow, 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 yellow. Right? Not everything, but the majority, the big ones that are standing out, right? You're gonna want to whack the biggest yellow moles here. Similarly, let's do a bit of this. Here we're starting to get kind of get to the point where a lot of the canvas is getting covered. So now you start kind of, when there's less and less of the yellow, you start wanting to be a little bit careful that we don't go too far, because if we do go too far with all of these dots, then we may have to put some yellow back in, and that could be complicated because we might have to add white and then paint yellow back over top of them, just because how dark all these other colors will be that they'd have to cover or go over top of. And painting yellow over top of other colors usually makes that yellow almost invisible. So I think that's pretty good. Looks like he's got a few lines here and there. Minimals. Okay. Let's zoom back out again. Okay. I think we'll just leave this for right now, and we'll come back after we've got a little bit more work done on the face and the background, etc. Okay. What is really interesting about this is how the face also has some modeling inside here, right? Like, so he is still using some of the techniques he did in the past. You know, it would not surprise me if he began this painting in a more classical style, like he did the Potato Eaters, and then maybe he just got frustrated with it at a certain point and was like, you know what, screw this, I'm just going to start doing a little bit more of an experimental technique. And then I think he was probably quite pleased with it and decided to keep it. Because, like we saw earlier on, it was... Van Gogh frequently painted over paintings, he frequently destroyed paintings, he frequently painted on the backside of paintings. Maybe, you know, often when he was waiting for his brother to send more money, he would use, you know, whatever he could find, cardboard and stuff. There was a book published recently claiming to be the lost drawings of Van Gogh that were in the a ledger that one of the landlords that he had at one point in his life, that, you know, when they would yeah, it was like it recorded when people were coming and going to their hotel, or short, you know, kind of, it was like a, you know, people could come stay there for like a month at a time, right? And so they were recording in there, and it looks like Van Gogh, or at least it could be a forgery. Some people think it's a forgery, some people think it's the real thing. In fact, let's see. Let's load this up here. Come on. So here's this sketchbook, the lost drawings of Van Gogh that were in this ledger. I don't know. To be honest, like, some of these drawings, like that drawing is brutally bad. Like that one, which is on the cover, I just think it's possible that but it's also entirely possible that these are all forgeries. That's just my opinion. Because there is a Van Gogh is probably the most forged artist of all time. There is tons and tons of fake Van Goghs on the walls of major museums, and there's lots of great documentaries where I can't remember what it's called. I think it's called F for Fake by Orson Welles, starring Orson Welles, and he talks to a number of forgers. One of which says that, you know, every time I go to a museum, and this is in somewhere in Europe, I think in England, he says I can see like dozens of my paintings on the walls all over the place, and people think they're by Van Gogh and Rembrandt and etc., but they're all by that forger, right? And of course, major museums are loath to, like, if a painting's been on the wall for 100 years, they don't want to have to take it off, take all the postcards and umbrellas that they've made prints of. If it's a fake, they want it, so they're very reluctant to let people examine some of those paintings. Anyway, let's keep on going. So here, let's now, I think, start focusing on the face. And there's a lot. What should we do here? I think if we just zoom in, what I want to do is maybe some of this little bit darker peachy color, like we see almost on the nose here. I bet you that would have been an early color that goes down on here, because I think he's right now starting to look for the light and dark areas in the face. You can see there's lots of this muddy gray greenish color, especially underneath, which is actually quite interesting. Yeah, I would bet money that this painting evolved over a period of time, as opposed to all in at once, which is often how he did work, was painting, you know, painting a day. But as I said that, you know, he might make a painting a day, and then it might sit on against the wall, and he's looking at it, and then a month later he's like, you know what, I'm going to do something, and picks it up and does a little more to it. And so that I do that all the time with my own art. Okay, so let's mix this particular color here. So that looks like we have... That's an interesting color. There's some white in it. I wonder if we could take this same color we mixed here. This is our warm red with some warm blue, or cool blue, and a bit of white. Well, it's pretty close, if you ask me. I'm just going to take a bit of warm yellow and put that in here just to... yeah, it's okay. I think it actually might have been okay without it, but I'm just going to put it in there anyway, just so it's not too cold of a color. And then, again... Actually, you know what? I am going to use, just for the sake of speeding the painting up a little bit, because it's this part of the face looks like it was done, you know, in a combination of various different styles. So I think he's got, oh, I think it needs a little bit more white in there. So he's searching for the light and dark areas of this face, and starting with the darker parts here first, where the shadows are. Including the hair too, right? So the bottom part of the mustache where it meets his upper lip, that would also get kind of dark there. Under here, and then on his neck. And his ear. Okay, so I think that's probably pretty close to what he would have done here. Okay. Just got a bunch of brushes with different bits of paint on it, so I'll just clean up a little bit here before I move on. And then what should the next color be? I think the next one would be similar to this, but the opposite, right? So we've got this kind of reddish purple, and what's on the opposite side of the color wheel? Where did I put my what's on the opposite side of this reddish purple? We're right around here. Green. But since it's sort of a little bit diluted, the opposite would be a kind of a grayish green. Right, so you can see that we're kind of alternating between reds and blues, yellows and purples, greens and reds, oranges and blues. And that would probably be a great way to approach the entire painting, is just switching back and forth each time if you're wondering what's the next color should I pick next. So let's mix. We'll go for. Well, he is using cool colors. I'll use the same colors he's using. I would probably go for a little bit warmer colors, but who am I to dispute the master? So I'm going to take this cool blue. And where is it here? I'm going to zoom into the painting so you can see the color that I'm trying to mix. It's kind of this grayish green. So let's take, I'm going to take some cool yellow, cool blue, a bit of warm red. Oops, that's a little bit too much. Let's get more blue in here. A bit more yellow in there. And some white, just as we did. Not bad. I mean, I think, yeah, actually it's pretty good. Well, let's put a bit more warm red. There we are, a little bit more gray. And then let's do the same thing. Maybe we'll zoom in just to the face here. Okay, so let's continue to get some of the darker shadows in place. I'm feeling good about where we are. Pretty heavy-handed with some larger brush strokes. Well, we're going to get a little more refined shortly. Those eyes. Okay. Great. Maybe even could have maybe put made it a little bit more grayish, but there'll be plenty of time here to continue on that. Great question. Maria in the chat asks, dear people, I was wondering, how does an artist find its way to uniqueness? Thoughts? Great question. So how did an artist like Van Gogh find his style? How did he, we love him now, and his style was unique at the time, so unique that a lot of people, even his close friends who were painting in similar styles or had similar interest in color, were like, yeah, I like it, but yeah, I don't know. It's just a little bit sloppy, a little messy, a little bit too bright of colors. He could probably use a little bit more editing. So how did he arrive at that? And how would, I think ultimately the question is, how would me or you or anyone else find their uniqueness? The thing that I would say, just the quick answer to that, is by doing a lot of painting. And I think if we just go back to these portraits here, remember he did 43 of these self-portraits. And we see him exploring again and again and again and again and again the same thing, right? A great way to improve. Oh, you can't even see this. Here's, right, we're looking at these portraits again. And he's just investigating the same image of his face over and over and over again. The benefit of painting the same thing over and over, like your own portrait, or painting your hand, or the same vase, or the same cup, or the same anything, right? It could be painting your phone, your coffee mug, a toy, a pair of scissors, an old camera. Painting the same object over and over again is, you start to become very familiar with the shape and how to draw it and how to just get it on canvas quickly. If you're painting something for the very first time, even myself, it takes a little bit of time to figure out how to construct it onto the canvas. If you've done it 5 times already, then you can almost like quickly sketch it in from memory. You don't even have to be looking at yourself like, oh, okay, I can just get that in, and then boom. So that helps. It takes away the stress of trying to get it correct, the drawing part. The other thing is that when you're doing it over and over, you get kind of bored, and you're just like, I painted it like this before. What is something different? I'm going to put a hat on. I'm going to put a hat on. Yeah, and I did a lot of little dots, like in this painting. What if we extend those dots into lines? Okay, let's do a few of those. We'll do a bunch of those. Oh, I like how that's turning out. Why don't we just get rid of the dots entirely? Let's put in some... What about we... wow, let's do some bright colors now. Let's add some bright color in the background. Oh, that's turning out interesting. That's very different, right? So, I think, there's a book that we talk about in art school that I make my students read. It's called, this book, Art and Fear, Observations on the Perils and Factors for doing this, reminds me I got to do my book order for the fall semester. It's like, I can't believe school starts in a month from now. But this book, highly recommended, The Art and Fear. It's you can probably find it online for cheap, like here, 24 used for $8.95 Canadian, which is like $5 American, right? If you're going to get a book on art and you want to get something that's, I think this is a great inspiring book. It talks about like all the anxieties and fears that artists have, that most artists think they're the only ones on earth who have those fears. So having that, I think, helps make you feel like you're not so nutty after all, that there's a lot of other people who've dealt with the same issues you have. That's a great question. I'll talk about it as we go here. I want to get a little more paint on the canvas. It's kind of interesting to see them like that. And the stage we're at here. Okay, so let's go to this view. Zoom out just a little bit so they are closer to the same size. There we are. Okay, now I think we want to brighten up the face a little bit. Although maybe I want to get a bit of these, since I've just mixed that green, I think I'm going to put it a little bit in the background. As I said that, and then I'm like, you know what, let's do something a little bit different, just so that the face isn't the final thing that I do here. So let's do this quickly. Now, if you're painting with just regular heavy body acrylics, which is the most common type of acrylic paint, even if you make kind of big blobs of paint, it'll probably settle down to, there'll still be some texture after it's dry, but it won't be as thick as it might appear right now, because as the water inside the acrylic evaporates, it will self-level and come down a little bit. But it might be wet while you're painting on it, so just kind of, you might find that to be a little bit frustrating, because you might accidentally brush your hand over some wet paint. And I'm just going to take a bit of red and mix this in here to get a bit of a darker color. Just notice there's not really much of this color on this side of his face, so I'm going to kind of put it sparingly. But as we get up here, we're getting much darker towards the back side of his head, which is a common sort of technique in portrait painting. You put like the shadow in behind someone's head as opposed to in front of their face, because if the light is coming from this side, it will probably bathe one side of the face in shadow, which is maybe not super flattering to have such a strong shadow on the face. Okay. So, last episode I was meaning to spend a great deal of time talking about the famous incident where Picasso cuts his ear off following an argument with Paul Gauguin. And Paul Gauguin leaves Arles. Van Gogh is later arrested, and it's really the beginning of the end for him. His legal troubles and mental health problems all kind of there's no hiding that part of him anymore. It's now literally part of the official record, his police records, etc. So we can talk a little bit about that as we kind of work a bit here on the background. This little bit of tedious work here, just getting dots everywhere and building up this surface. So, taking again more of this cold blue. We even take a little bit more cold red. Put it in here. Take a bit of this. So that's cold. That was warm red. I'm going to take a bit of cold red and put that in here, just because I haven't used much of it in this painting thus far. And just want to keep on building lots. like what appears probably on camera to be a lot of white mixed into the paint is actually texture on the surface of the painting. So let's just got a different view here. I don't know if you can. Come on. Let's move the water all the way out of the way. Oops. Right, all this which looks like white paint is all very textured surface here. Right? So allow yourself the freedom just to kind of get a little bit wild, and you really can't go wrong here by whatever colors you put down on here. If it's, you know, I would just sort of check in and think like, okay, what is the overall like look here? Do we want it to be dark or light? Let's see, what else should we anything more over here? It's definitely darker there. I think let's do a little bit, put some white into this color even. So this green. It's a lot of white. Let's take a bit of warm yellow, put this. Okay. It's a little too much white that I put in there, but I'm gonna go with it. I can always paint over anything that I do, so, and I'm sure this is the same thing kind of what Van Gogh would have done. As he painted, he might have gone like, you know what, I don't like those bright green dots, so I'll paint over a bunch of them. And you know what, now that I've got that color mixed, it makes me think I could actually put a little bit of this in places on the face. Okay. So this is just cool blue and cool yellow. keep on going, building up surfaces. I'm curious to know if anyone's seen any of the great movies, some great, some less great, that have been made about Vincent Van Gogh. There was the recent, I think the most recent one that I know of is the At Eternity's Gate, starring Willem Dafoe, who I love. I love Willem Dafoe. I think he's a great actor. And it's almost like one of those things you're like, as soon as I saw the posters, I was like, oh, of course. He should have played Van Gogh decades ago, because there was a little bit of controversy when that movie was released, and that, like, why Willem Dafoe is in his 50s, why is he playing a 35-year-old man, right? They should have got a younger person. But he does look like almost a spitting image of Van Gogh. That movie, incidentally, was made by the artist. The director of that film is Julian Schnabel. Julian Schnabel also directed the film Basquiat and The Diving Bell and Butterfly, which is a great movie. If you haven't seen The Diving Bell and Butterfly, very uplifting movie about a kind of a terrifying thing. It's this guy who I think he's the editor of Vogue magazine or something. It's a true story, based on a book written by this person, this editor of Vogue, who I think he has like I'm trying to remember if it was an accident or a sudden like heart attack or something. Anyway, he's paralyzed. Read it years ago, but he's paralyzed to the point where he cannot move anything but his eyes. And for a while he's in a coma, and he comes out of the coma and realizes he can't walk. He can't do anything but hear people and see people. So he can't speak to them, and so he learns to write by blinking his eyes, and he communicates with people that way. And that entire book is written, and you can imagine how long it would take, because the alphabet, his nurse would hold this like card in front of his face. I'm trying to remember how it worked, but anyway, it's just a really inspiring story of, like, if you think like your life is terrible and you got the short end of the stick, just imagine laying in a hospital bed and not people thinking you're basically dead, and then they realize that you're fully awake, listening and watching the whole time. But I think it's a super inspiring story of overcoming incredible levels of adversity. Okay, so I took this. This is just cool yellow and warm blue, and dabbing it in and around the background. I would still consider what we're doing here as our underpainting. So if you're sitting here thinking like, this looks like garbage right now, well, that's what we've thought about, like, every painting we've made this week, and this is the 106th painting that I've made over the past year as part of this series of videos, and every single one of them looks terrible at one stage of the painting. Now, some people would say they look terrible by the end also. But every painting goes through a period where it just looks terrible, and you just wonder if you just lost your mind or not, and what on earth you're doing with your time, and maybe you should give up and just do something else, explore knitting, or I don't know, board games, to do something else in your free time. And I really want to. I know I'm kind of a broken record about this, but I talk about a painting as being like a roller coaster ride, and sometimes it's going up and you're really excited, and then sometimes it just goes off the, you get up you go up to the top of that wooden trestle, and you're really happy, and then all of a sudden the ground gives out underneath you and you're literally going downhill. Just remember that you're on a track. You're not going to die. The track is going to eventually, you're going downhill, and like the painting is ruined. What have I done? It's going to come back up again. So you just have to hold on tight, keep on painting, or maybe take a break, maybe work on something else, maybe watch something else on YouTube, whatever you got to do, and then come back later when you're feeling a little more refreshed. Okay. So really, we're trying to just build up this density of marks here. Right now, this is maybe a little bit too bright. Some of that green that I put with white in there is a little bit too intense. As much as silly as this might look, there is it is actually quite subtle, right? Once we get into some greens and oranges in here, I think you'll see it change again. But I'll probably do a few more layers on there. Okay. Wow, all of a sudden, all these questions in the chat there. It's like, oh, a lot of more people just joined up. I wonder, was there something interesting going on that I just missed? A big historic event happening on the news? Deborah says, hi everyone, I'm at the same stage as Heidi. I just finishing off Nelson Mandela's portrait, which we did last week, and working on Michael's drawing class of Van Gogh's bedroom. Thanks, Michael, so much to do, and you teach us so much. I appreciate it. It is funny, the more of these shows I'm doing, I notice that there's less viewers at times. I think because people get overwhelmed. I'm putting a bunch of content out at the same time because I know in the fall it'll be basically just Tuesdays and Thursdays, and which is probably better for most people. But I also want to create enough content that if people are like, I don't know if I want to paint Thursday's painting. Well, there's 107 other paintings that you can do, right? Maria said, I am so thankful, Michael. Seriously, not just for your answering my questions, but for all you've taught us so far. You clearly are so passionate about your work. I appreciate that. Thank you, Maria. Well, you know what? I've devoted my life to making art. I love making art, and I've taught art at every level. I've taught seniors in care homes. I've taught university students who are 17 and 40, and people who are, when I was 30 and people are 40. I've taught people who are older than me at the university level. I've taught in high schools here in Vancouver and in Los Angeles, where I used to live. I've taught elementary schools, again in LA and in Vancouver, and I've taught kindergarten kids. I've taught kids to hold paintbrushes and scissors and pencils for some of the very first times they've ever done any of those things, right? And I passionately believe that art can change the world, and at the very least, if you're very cynical and you don't believe that, I think it can change people, individual people, and individual people change the world, right? So the more creative people are, the more they have a creative outlet for their emotions, their joy, as well as their fears and anger. I think we need more of that. We need more people making paintings, making sculptures, learning how to play violin, taking up dance, no matter what age they are, rather than getting on Facebook and writing angry comments and destroying friendships and families and getting upset about stupid things going on in the news, right? If we channel that into, like, if you hate some politician, rather than getting angry about it, and there is pros and cons to being angry about things, and I think there's some justifiable anger about certain issues in the world, and we've talked about some of those on these episodes. But I think if you were to channel that anger into making a painting of a politician you disliked, right? that you might have a lot of fun. You could turn it in. You could put that politician's head on the body of the devil, or on a horse, or a donkey, or coming out of a donkey's rear end or something. That would give you a lot. You'd probably find that very funny, satisfying. Like, I'm sticking it to them. I can use my imagination to transform this person I dislike into this ridiculous character, and that gives you some agency. Like, you have some control over your life. You put it onto the internet, and who knows where that image could go. People are walking around in t-shirts in coffee shops on the other side of the world by tomorrow afternoon. Or instead, you make paintings of the things you are passionate about and you like, right? You're troubled by some of the things, and paint some paintings of flowers or things that make you happy, and surround yourself by that. I think that would change the world if everyone did that, as opposed to getting angry all the time. Anyway, that's my little mini rant about that. And so I feel like almost a need to want to help by promoting some of these techniques and processes, so that anybody feels they can do this. Maria says, I wish I dedicated my life to art as well. Brian says, that's what's so great about paint. Paul says, I'm thankful after my retirement. God is giving me my art life. I'm also a survivor of breast cancer from 2018. That's so cool. That makes me so excited. There's breast cancer in my family's history, and that makes me really excited that you're a survivor of breast cancer, and that this is how you're spending your life now, right? There's this huge movement of people into art as therapy, or art therapy as the genre, and they've proven that, like, veterans who suffered horrible like physical accidents in war, as well as the symptoms of PTSD, like going into military veterans hospitals and teaching painting and violin and all that stuff, makes huge improvements to people's lives, right? Okay, I'm going to finish this and get right back here. Ricardo says, me encanta. Not sure what that means, Ricardo. See? All right. Tomcat55 says, this painting makes me want to bring out the brushes again. Keep up the good work, sir. And some claps. Thank you so much, Tomcat. Well, why don't you? Why don't you break out those brushes and paint along with me, right? Especially at this stage, right? I'm sure there's people tuning in and are like, oh my goodness, that's brutal. I could do that. Great. If you look at what I'm doing right now and you feel like you could do that, that it looks like, then that would be that. Then do it. Take that as a invitation, right? Because if you can get to this stage, then over the next hour and a half or so, you can finish it just like I'm about to do, right? And I'll show you exactly how to do it. Okay, enough. I'm just gonna get off my soapbox and finish the rest of the class here. So what should we do next here? We've got a bunch of paint there. We've got lots of big globs of paint, which I like. I like that texture that I've got here on the surface. Let's see if we can see. I don't know if you can see how thick some of that paint is there, right? But there's definitely some big globs of paint on there. As it dries, they're going to settle down a little bit, but the other thing too is it can be a little bit of a pain in the butt when you're painting and you're mixing into big globs of paint that are already there, and it gets on your paintbrush and etc. So let's work on the face, because that's definitely dry. I think now I'm going to go into my lighter colors now. We're going to start we've got some of the darker areas here. We're going to go to the other direction. So I think let's mix a sort of more traditional skin tone. So I'm going to need a little bit more paint and put some warm yellow and warm red on my palette, and I got some white there already. And okay, so we're perfect. Okay, so I'm going to take my warm yellow. on my warm red. We're going to mix a kind of a batch of this. So we'll make a bit more. We got this orange. Kind of similar, we made a color like that we painted onto the face originally anyway. Right? So we don't need to apply that maybe just yet. Now let's take a bit of warm blue. So get us a little bit more slightly brown. Like you see, I barely put any in there, right? And all of a sudden that bright fire engine orange starts to go brown. And you know, it's interesting if you look at this, right? His hair, you know, on first glance kind of looks brown, and then you look at it and you're like, actually there's really no brown there at all. We've got green, we've got orange, we've got pink, we've got blue, we've got yellow, dark blue, you know, bright red. So what's happening there is he's using those oppositions of color to create the effect. So in our brains, we're seeing all of those colors are mixing in our head rather than on the canvas, which is, you know, that might also sound really crazy, but if you've ever zoomed in on a magazine or a comic book, you see the Ben-Day dot pattern, right? Which is yellow, little dots of yellow, dots of red, dots of blue. You know, up close it just looks like, you know, you're looking at a microscopic image of bacteria. You put it away and all of a sudden there's an image there, right? So we've got this brown, however, and I'm going to take some white and just mix into here a bit. So we do have a bit of a brown. It's kind of a little bit. We put more white in here, we'll get closer to a kind of a khaki color. And I think I'm going to do the same, but kind of mix maybe a little bit more yellow, warm yellow, into there. Let's do the same here, but let's put more white in there. And then even let's do it again. So I like having lots of little mixtures pre-mixed, and then I can just jump around on my canvas. Right, so I've got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kind of pre-mixed versions of this. If this was, now I'm painting with acrylic, if this was oil paint, they would stay wet for days. With acrylic, they're going to dry within the next half hour, so I got to sort of pick up the pace a little bit. But okay, let's zoom back in a bit. Okay. So we want to sort of think about, like, I use the analogy of like chiseling into a block of marble, the way that Van Gogh paints. And so sometimes you're going in one direction, and then sometimes you're going the other direction, which is a lot like cross-hatching in drawing. And those of you who've taken my drawing classes, we did some cross-hatching at various different times. I think I taught that in one of the very first episodes. So just keep on building outwards like this. These kind of radiating lines. Here's his eyebrow. And we've got this top eyelid and bottom eyelid. So you can see basically this is totally different. Like we've done, I had probably about a dozen portraits over the past year, at least, right? And we've never painted a portrait like this at all before, right? This is a very different approach. But it's, well, it is very different, but it's also like using, like this idea of modeling the form like this is also not too alien, right? When I'm painting, I always try to think of like getting the brush strokes to go in particular directions. So I've just stepped down from, I had my bright mix, now I just kind of went down into this one. It's sort of like what I was doing with the jacket, like I'm putting lines between the lines I've just painted. I don't know, you might go like, well, what's the point of, if we're going to put all of this bright color over top, like why did I even bother putting those blues and reds on the face to begin with? It's because we will see we'll get the, like, can you see in here, there is like these dark layers underneath everything. Painting is not just about the surfaces of things. When we see a painting in a museum, we're not just seeing the final layer of paint. We're seeing all of the paint on there at the same time. We might only be consciously aware of that final layer of paint, but we're seeing all of it. And like Van Gogh's here, it's mixing in our head. I guess I'll keep it down there, sorry. I think what's so satisfying about his work is this kind of the building up of these particular layers of paint, and the masterful way in which he did them. Okay. And you know, if you go too dark or too light, that's all right. In fact, that's even awesome. Like that makes it, it's like you're then the dark areas will have nuance when you go back over it later on. So one thing that I'll just kind of mention is I know it can be a little bit easy to, you might lose the shape of the form every once in a while. Like that ear kind of disappearing a little bit. And it can be helpful just to kind of go back in with a little bit of paint and outline things a little bit before it's completely gone. Okay. I'm going to go in here. I think I'm going to take a bit of the... actually, I'll just take this little bit lighter warm yellow. Remember, we mixed all these just a few minutes ago all together, all at once. And there are a few portraits. I didn't see them there on the Wikipedia page, but there's a few self-portraits he did that look pretty much like this. That are really wild, like with very pronounced lines. As he's still trying to figure out this system. Another movie that was released recently about Van Gogh was Loving Vincent, this animated film that was done entirely in Van Gogh's style and made up of hundreds of thousands of individual little paintings. I was actually invited to become one of the artists to help produce that film. But you had to move to, I think it was Poland, for like 18 months or something, and I just I didn't really want to be away from family for that particular length of time, and my teaching at university, all that stuff. So, but if you have a chance to see it, it's great. I think it's on Amazon Prime, maybe? Is that where I saw it recently? Or I saw it in the theater here at the Vancouver International Film Festival a few years ago. I can't wait to go see a movie again one of these days. Okay. So, like, look at how different this painting is now, right? So, a few minutes ago it looked kind of very unfinished, kind of sloppy. Now it looks a lot like Van Gogh, although I would say it looks a lot like someone imitating Van Gogh or trying to paint in his style, and particularly a little bit maybe more modern, right? Some of these colors are even brighter than what he would have done. So we still have a little bit of work to get it a little bit closer to this point. So what should we do next here on this? I think I want to go to a darker brown on the mustache. I'm going to start getting closer. I'm going to work my way into the red here. And then I'll probably go peachy and again, right? So just sort of moving around. You're trying my best to paint between the lines that are there, rather than over top of existing lines. Okay, let's get a little bit of, start getting orange into the cheeks here. Okay, let's get a bit more red. I went red really quickly. Just kind of get a bit more orange into that red. I think I'm going to also use this orange in the background as well in a few places. So now I'm starting to kind of slow down a little bit as I have kind of built up this enough kind of paint that now I can really just get more specific. Of course, while we're talking about Van Gogh related films, I think one of my favorite films is the Lust for Life film, starring Kirk Douglas. I think it's probably made in the late 1950s, maybe, or maybe it's like, let's say 57, 56. I bet you that it was made. Great film. I think it actually does a really good job of describing Van Gogh's kind of headspace at that time. Kirk Douglas, you know, he plays Van Gogh like a pretty wild kind of character, but I think Van Gogh probably was a bit of a character, right? So let's take this orange, and I think we'll zoom out to do this so we can see a little bit more clearly. Yeah, if you haven't seen Lust for Life, I think it would be highly recommended for anyone watching this today. You get an idea of why Kirk Douglas, who is the father of Michael Douglas, I think you get an idea of why he was a huge superstar during that period of his life, because he committed fully to the role of Vincent Van Gogh. Other movies, there's Tim Roth played Van Gogh in a movie called what was it? I think Vincent and Theo, or Teo, or Vincent and Me. Or I'm trying to remember what that was called. It's been probably 2 decades since I saw that movie. Really good. I was watching some clips just the other night of Benedict Cumberbatch, Benedict Cumberbatch. Benedict Cumberbatch. Probably better known for playing Sherlock Holmes, which I love. I love those Sherlock Holmes. I'm a huge Sherlock Holmes fan, so anything Sherlock Holmes related, I love. As I go, I'm just gonna now start using more red in these dots as I go around to the back side here. So less and less orange in my red. It's almost like Van Gogh is like has become a bit of a caricature and like a rite of passage for some actors, like to portray Van Gogh as sort of like doing Shakespeare or something. Which I don't mind. I have lots of friends who, every time there's like a scene in a movie about an artist, just roll their eyes. What a ridiculous... I think it's great. I love it to see movies about artists, and I often find it really funny. Like, you know, Hollywood likes to mythologize artists, just like they like to glamorize cinema itself. And I think people are fascinated with artists because the idea of creativity is this elusive thing that people devote their whole lives to trying to understand and to write books about. And I'm going to add just a little bit of white into this red in a few places. Like just a little bit of white I put in here. And I'm also going right up into the hair and on top of the hair in places. Because I'm going to, as I build the hair up, the hair will go over top of some of the background. So I don't want there to be this sort of like line, halo of I want it to all mesh together well. Okay. Getting there. Okay, so I've got mostly just red on my paintbrush here. So now let's look, I think let's zoom back in. Let's get some red on here. Now, some darker reds in here. I'm still going to paint this red over top. I'm going to put my pinky finger down right on the center. I'll just show. Looking for a place that doesn't have too much big areas of wet paint. So that's like an eye or something. Anywhere that I can just land my finger like a Apollo spacecraft onto the painting. Okay. So mostly this is just the warm red right out of the tube. So this painting it's a little bit wild right now, right? If anything, it's starting to look a little bit like the Wolfman, right? So we are gonna like come back. We'll put a little bit of fleshy colors more over top, some pinks and peachy colors. But I think we just still need to keep building up a little bit more. Now I'm actually I'm gonna take a bit of white and red. Let's get a bit pinky. You know what? It makes me think, like, just back to Marie's question about how to find your kind of, I guess, identity or uniqueness as an artist. And, you know, I think it really does come down to a little bit of having tried lots of different things. Finding, until you kind of just stumble upon the one that just feels most natural to you, that you're not having to fight the canvas all the time to kind of get results. Because there is a big part of painting that sometimes feels like you're you know, getting ready for a boxing match with the canvas, and you're sometimes you walk away feeling like you've taken a few blows to the nose or something, right? You're like, wow, I don't know if I want to get back in the ring with that fella. It's pretty brutal over there. So, I want this anywhere else? No, I think I'm good. Okay. So, I think... You know, I've said this about a few other paintings in the past. Like, I could be pretty happy walking away from the painting right now. Now, I want to put, let's say, another 45 minutes worth of work into it to finish it. But I know some people might get exhausted and be like, yeah, you know what? I think I got it. I get the idea, general gist of the technique. I'm good. If that's the case and you want to just end right there, I think you should feel really happy with your achievement. Now, I'm going to tighten this up and get it closer to the original, but that would be you know, if I was teaching a class in person, and we could get to this stage in a 2-hour session, which is roughly where we're at right now, that would be, I think, a huge success, right? And then there might be a few little things people might want to do at home, but I think, you know, I think anyone looking at this painting would be like, oh yeah, it's a Van Gogh. I totally get it. I see it. Yeah, boom, awesome. But I want to get closer to the level of refinement that he has in his version. Now, some of his final paintings, definitely, they look almost similar to what we've got here already. He doesn't tighten things up quite as much. He allows them to be quite loose. But what I like about this painting, just in terms of like our class, is we can learn a lot about his technique in one class, because we can get to this point, which looks a lot like Van Gogh's late paintings. And by late paintings, I mean the paintings he did just a year, 2 years. He's dead in just 2.5 years from this point. So we can learn a lot about his technique and what the late paintings look like. But by adding a little bit more to it, we can kind of go back and understand a little bit more of the previous, like all of the knowledge he had before that he ultimately sort of left behind. I guess, I don't know if any of that makes any sense. Because, you know, I can only paint so many paintings, so I'm always like, what painting can give us the most full experience of an artist's technique? And so that's why I really like this painting. So I'm going to go into the lips. We got... Actually, I'm going to get a bit of white on here as well. Just going to paint this bottom lip quite white, so that when I paint, I think there's like a bright red over top of it. When I paint that, it will be able to see it properly. And then this eye, fixing a few little things there that I noticed. In fact, while I'm painting a little bit of that, I've got this pinky peachy thing going on. Let's do a peachy color. So I'm taking my warm red, my warm yellow, ideally more of the warm yellow. Where should we do this? And now we're going to be a lot more careful about things. We're now, you know, it's like we've got this real rough thing, and now we're gonna put like much smaller brush strokes around, maybe hiding little bits of some previous marks on here. Let's zoom in again. In fact, let's zoom quite close into the face for the first time here. So I got this kind of peachy color on my brush. So this is the kind of thing that you could actually end up spending hours and hours and hours doing. Because it's pretty tricky to, you know, when you're trying to get the paint to mix optically, like the pointillist did and the artist that he's kind of emulating here. You're putting little bits of color, and then you put a little bit, it's too much, now I gotta darken or lighten that area. I didn't, okay. So, let me take some warm red. Some lips. We do now. We'll get a darker red in here again. Let's get our warm red. We take some cold blue. Even maybe a bit of cold yellow or cold red. So cold red, cold blue, but mostly warm red. Is that dark enough? Let's see. I think it needs just a bit more cold red, or cold blue, sorry. Oops. Okay. Just a few more of this dark red. You know, every brush stroke I put in here, I go like, oh, you know, that needs to be a little bit, oh, you know, I need to go, oh, right, so it's one of these things is like, how long of an adventure do you want to go on for today? Like, how much detail do you think is required to finish your version of the painting? So what I'm doing with these little lines is this is kind of like the area under his mustache that I'm just describing there. Similarly, we have down here is under the beard or close to the neck, kind of where, you know, there's his jawline. You'll notice that one thing that he's doing in this painting that he does a lot is a lot of just like angular lines. Like, look at how angular the eyes are, right? Not arcs that we typically see, but fairly angular mark making. Okay, so that was our dark red. I think we want to now go into, we haven't put some green on here in a while. So I want kind of a, let me see if this green will work. We have it left over. This is cold blue, cold yellow, and a little bit of warm red, right? So it's the same thing that we did up here. Right, except we didn't have any cold yellow in it, and we put mostly warm red. So it's sort of the opposite. It's the same three ingredients, but different ratios. Creates a radically different color, right? A little bit too gray for that area, so we'll work more over here, although it's maybe a little too much white in there. So I'm just going to add a little bit more. Keep mixing into the white. I could just mix it again. Taking my cool blue, cool yellow, and a little bit of warm red. A bit of white, but just have to be careful putting too much in there. Bit more cool yellow in there. It's too dark, or too, needs a little more saturation, a little kick. this a little bit lighter green. It's a little too much, eh? Little green dots here. So it's these, again, I've been trying to alternate back and forth between reds and greens, oranges and blues, yellows, and we haven't got to the purple yet, but we'll get there, right? He didn't use too much purples, at least in this painting, but there is a few, and we'll get to them shortly. But it's almost like every time I add a little bit of green, then I'm going to go to the opposite side of the color wheel afterwards. This canvas that he painted on is also much larger as usual, right, than the one we're painting on. We're painting on a 9 by 12 size canvas, so it's in fact, let's just take a second to look at the originals at the Art Institute of Chicago. I've never been. This is one of the great museums of art that I've never been to. Oh, it doesn't show the dimensions? Usually it would say right. Oh, here we are. So 41 by 32 centimeters, or 16.5 by 12.5 inches. So basically, this painting is, if I was to zoom, let's zoom all the way out. The painting is this wide by almost basically another canvas stacked on top. Like, to get there, I would need that, right? So basically double the size of the canvas we're working on right now. So if you're thinking like, wow, it's really hard to get all these details in, just remember that he's working on double the surface area that we're working on. Still got this green on my brush. You can see how we need to get this area. It's got all these beautiful oranges and everything in here, but we need to rein it in with some green. And it's fascinating because green would probably not be the first color you would think of painting someone's hair, right? And Van Gogh knows that. He's not this wild, crazy person that he's often portrayed. He might have had some bouts of pretty manic behavior, but he's a smart guy. He knows what he's doing when it comes to painting. I mentioned yesterday, if you want to really dive into Van Gogh, to go to your library or bookstore and buy a copy of read his letters, the collected letters. I would get the annotated, edited version of them. Otherwise, there's a lot. You can also read them online. There's because all of it's in the public domain at this point. I could also use a lot more white in there. So I think maybe we'll come back white and yellow. So maybe we'll do that as the soon. I think. I'm not quite sure exactly what the next step is yet. Like, can you see how he's got the greens, and then he probably picked up the red after, painted some red, right? And then he went over and picked up some browns, and then some blues. Every time he goes back to the palette, he's changing the color a little bit. Okay, I think now I'm going to take some white. And do this collar. So I took the same green that I had on my brush already and just used it for this. Put same green, I just mixed in some white into here. Okay, so it's a little bit subdued just right now. Let's just take a bit of, I'm just going to get some actual white on my brush here. Okay, you can see how he did that, and then he also painted his neck sort of going over top of the collar. I'm going to save that for a little bit. Let's do there's a kind of a cool, or actually, now I think that's a bit of a warm blue. We have barely used the warm blue at all. We are going to use more of it shortly here, so. It's like it's a warm, I think it's got a bit of both in there. So cool blue and warm blue. Okay. I'm going to come back out because I think I'm going to put this same blue that I just mixed into the background in a few places. Maybe with just a little bit more blue in the mixture, so it's not quite as bright white. And now that I'm I'm getting closer to being done. These dots that I'm making, because they're going to be kind of resting on the surface, taking a little bit more care to do them. They're less just sort of blop, blop, blop. And now they're almost like I'm trying to, if you remember the Yayoi Kasuma painting we did about a couple months ago, it's sort of like making those little dots. So much more refined, less lazy splattering. And I know it can get a little bit, you know, when you're getting close to the end of the painting, the tendency is to want to just speed up. I think it should go the opposite. The beginning of the painting should be fast. Just get it onto the canvas, get paint on, fill it up. And then once you're there, then slow it down. Take some time. You know, that's one approach to painting. There's certainly lots of other philosophies of painting that would argue for the exact opposite, that the beginning is sort of just very careful, and then once you get going, you speed up, you know, like a shuttle taking off. Right, all the preparation happens before the well, that's a little bit too white, isn't it? I'll wait for that to dry, and I'm not sure if I have to come back over top of that with some blue. Just a little bit too much. So this is, I got warm blue with cool blue in here and a little bit of white. And this is great. Now I really start feeling the effects of that green and blue together here in the background. Is it as good as his painting? No. But does it bother me? Am I humiliated? Am I angry with myself? No. Am I frustrated that... Do I feel like this is a waste of time because it doesn't look exactly like his painting? No. Am I going to give up making art because it doesn't look exactly like his? No. None of those things. Like, it's one of these, I almost imagine, see, that's a little bit too much. I went a little wild with the white in that blue. That's disappointing, but I can always darken that. It's interesting. So this, I think I would have benefited by actually putting a darker base layer. Remember, I did make it a little bit darker on this side. I think it should have been much darker. And maybe I'll even almost put like a really dark, almost black into the background on that side. I think that would also help. So I'll let these guys dry up there. Okay, is there any... Do I need blue anywhere in that painting? I don't think so. Although, let's dive back in here. Just going to take a bit of a darker blue. That's a little too intense, but that's okay. Just going over these lines in the collar, which kind of disappeared a little bit. Now his is darker than mine, but I'm at this point I'm starting to think about my painting as or I'm thinking about this painting as my painting now. And what do I have to do to finish my painting? Not Van Gogh's painting, but my painting. So, which is a very different thing, right? Okay. See how I kind of was tapering the collar here. I think I'm starting to get closer to wrapping up just time-wise, so we'll just kind of bear that in mind with how much we can expect ourselves to paint over the next short little while. Let's take... Oh, that should have been a little bit more. It's almost like this is the secret to his kind of muddy color. He's painting oil, and so he's painting this flesh tone, peachy flesh tone over top of the green, and that's how we're getting. That's interesting. Okay, where else? I'm starting to kind of just explore the face with the color I've got, and this kind of peachy pink. Okay, where else can this color go? Okay. So yeah, everything's slowing down a lot as I get closer to the end here. More green up in the hair. How about that eye? That eye needs to be... So we're going to switch right from this pink to the green again. Ooh, okay. This green, I'm going to get kind of just muddy with it. Get some white on here, my darker colors. And just, again, I like this kind of muddy-ish green colors for up into the hair. Oops, it's a little bright. Oh, you know what we haven't put in? I see it. Now I see it. It takes me a while sometimes. It's, this whole time it's been warm yellow and warm blue is the color I'm after. This grassy green. There we go. The missing color. Haha. There we are. Yeah, now we're in business. You know, sometimes you just stare at a canvas for a while and it tells you, what it needs, so. Oh man, there's so many little details in here, so I'm just can't do it all. Any of this warm and that dark color will come shortly. I think it's now appropriate to get, since we're just using some warm yellow, get some white into that warm yellow. I think I need some more white. So this is my warm yellow. There's a little bit of warm blue still in here, so it's got a tiny bit of greenish quality to it. And we're going to start putting this in places on the face. Okay, let's get some warm yellow. So some of these brush strokes I put down are a bit, I'm a little bummed that they're being a little bit lazy. Oops. Is that water? If you're interested in learning about how the anatomy of the ear, I did a whole episode on how to draw ears a while ago as part of my how to draw class. There needs a little more white in there, doesn't it? Bungled that a bit. Okay, so I'm going to start winding down here as I get closer, finishing some details around the eyes and the eyes themselves. Eyes themselves. Okay, so let's go into these eyes now. Let's start getting darker. Let's put some warm blue, a little bit of cold blue here. Now it's interesting. Can you almost see that it looks like a head looking back at him in the mirror? There, isn't that cool? Wait for that to dry. While that's drying, let's go back to the red. So remember, we're kind of alternating one after the other, go back and forth, back and forth. Fix this nostril. Now we're kind of just outlining a few things. Into mix a bit of this color again. This is my warm red and cool blue to make a dark color. And take a bit of, I don't have any cool yellow left on here. That's all right. So I just want to, he's got a bit of a kind of a bump on his nose here. So mine's actually a lot darker than his now that I'm looking at it side by side, but I just don't have the time to continue to rework this painting endlessly. I don't quite have all the same subtlety that he has either. In fact, let's get, he's got red there on his cheeks. Okay, this is just like warm red right out of the tube. It's a little too close to that eye. There we go. Now I'm taking that same kind of color, basically just more blue in the mix. Okay, let's now go up to the hair as I get closer to wrapping up. So it's interesting because like he's began with this kind of more pointillist style in this painting, and then to kind of finish it off, he's using these much longer brushstrokes. So I can imagine him painting alongside Signac, and Signac saying like, "Whoa, like what are you doing? Like that's not the pointillist style. Like you're supposed to be little dots, like not big long lines like that. I don't think you're really paying attention, Vincent." And Vince's like, I don't know. I think it just, again, I don't have the patience for those little dots. I just, the painting wanted some lines in here, so now I'm putting lines in. And Signac being like, okay, well, you asked me to teach you this style, and then here you are just doing your own thing, so. I think Signac just joins that long list of people who just got super frustrated with Van Gogh not particularly paying attention or listening. Okay, I think we're probably about like 5 minutes away from wrapping up for for the day. Let's just take a look at where we're at versus the original. There's definitely things that could be improved on if we were to spend more time on it, but there's only so much. Don't like where that was, so I'll just stamp that out. And we'll have to fix the things I just did. Let's get a little bit of orange. Oops. Where's it going to paint that orange? Into the ear here. Into the forehead, just a little bit more orange. I want to get this a bit more pinkish. Not really what I was planning on doing, but it's, can I live with it is the question. I'm not sure. Yeah, so now I'm looking at the painting on the screen, zoomed out, to see if it can help me see any kind of glaring problems. sometimes I'm like, why are you touching up areas that are kind of fine? Just leave it alone, Michael. But that's the curse of being an artist sometimes. You just like, it's sometimes really hard to walk away from a painting. So now that it's interesting, as I back out and I look at it from further away, I find that really helpful. Like now it's driving me crazy because I see things in the painting that I hadn't seen before. I think I need a bunch more red down in the beard. Oh, and more red under here as well. Ah, this painting could just go on forever, can't it? Putting some little bit stronger lines that aren't in his painting. That was not the smartest there. Maybe that's a green that needs to go there instead. Nope, it doesn't go there either. It looks almost like a bit of a yellowy green or something. What is that color? close. It needs to be just a bit darker. I gotta say, this is one of those few paintings that has stumped me at times. There's a lot of just endless tiny detail that can be worked and worked and worked and worked and worked here. So I see Heidi in the chat says, wow, looks great, Michael. If I look a little bit from a distance, the expression is really good. I do see your Van Gogh has a bit longer hair, if anything. Yeah, I could see that for sure. See a little bit of a slightly longer hair. It's funny. I did not think this painting was going to take me this long. Okay, I think I'm just gonna call it a day for a couple seconds here. See all that orange up there? Don't you see? You just keep on noticing more things. It's like it's a curse, I tell you. Great art just makes you want to look closer and closer and closer. Okay. I just don't think it's going to get 10 times better in the next few minutes. Should be a little bit more green, shouldn't I? Taking a bit of this warm green, putting it in the collar here, coming up. Some warm blue. Like doing this type of a painting, like the kind of pointillist technique, it sort of goes in and out of, you know, you put a few brush strokes down, you're really happy, you put one or two little dots and lines, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, what happened? Where did it go? I thought we were having a good time here. What's going on? And then it kind of just surprises you. So it was one of those things that if you've never painted in this style, I can understand why, you know, there was so much of a reaction against this type of painting from the old guard of painters, because it looks on the surface kind of sloppy and simple, but when you actually try to paint it, it's, especially if you're coming from a little bit of a more classically trained kind of background, it's a mind warp. It is pretty tough. It often, for me, has felt a little bit like I'm a little more out of control than feels comfortable, which is not surprising. You know, Van Gogh was a bit of a wild character, wasn't he? A little bit out of control. Oh, I see. See more. Okay, I think it just looks a little dour and a little more melancholy than I think he did in the original, so Paula says you should take a sip of your tea. That's a good idea, Paula. Rachel chimes in and says, wow, wonderful painting. It makes me want to go to my studio and paint along. That makes me excited to hear that, Rachel. She also says, also, do you have any paintings that you have done personally? Just curious. Yes, I've done thousands of paintings and had exhibitions all over the world. The link to my website is, I think, at the very bottom of the video description below. You can see all the paintings that I've done for commissions and murals and travels that I've done. Yeah. So, there's lectures, there's appearances. I've been on television and newspapers and all that stuff, and there's links to those articles and clips from videos. There's clips to a lot of the interviews I've done. Not most of the recent ones, because I just stopped recording a lot of them. But the older ones are all there. Anyway, I was going to go look at this eye. I was just thinking about darkening, and then also lightening a little bit. Let's see if that makes any difference. A little bit too dark here. Let's see if I can just stamp a bit of it out. Finger, darn it. I also, to answer your question, Rachel, I'm illustrating a graphic novel about the artist Tom Thompson. It's a biography that should be, it'll be in stores by this time next year. It's being published by the biggest publisher, book publisher in Canada. So it should have a pretty wide, you'll be able to buy it on Amazon and all that kind of stuff. So as I get closer to, okay, I gotta just stop because I'm just, I don't know, what was I doing there? Why did I do that? So you can see I sometimes put a little bit of paint down and then I just use my finger to kind of smudge things out of the way. Not necessarily to completely erase it, but just to kind of like blend it out a little bit and see if I can just integrate it a bit. Okay, I think I don't know how many times I've said I'm gonna just stop. I think I'm just gonna stop and let's take a look one final time. Man, there's just, because this whole painting is made up of tiny little brushstrokes that are all visible, they're not hidden. It's every time I look at it, I see more brushstrokes that want to be incorporated into the painting. And at some point, it's just like, I can't get them all, right? I also don't have literally, I don't have the space for it on the canvas. He's got twice as much space on his canvas as I do. This is Chicago Art Institute. Or is it Chicago Institute of Art? Now I'm going to drive me crazy. It's Art Institute of Chicago. I should have looked that up. I just basically got all the letters in the wrong place. Art Institute of Chicago. Just because he did 43 of these, so I wanted to make some distinction of his, let me see. Yeah. Just wanted to be 100% sure the Yeah, you know, again, this tends to happen to me all the time when I'm doing these episodes, is when I'm comparing them side by side to the original, I often feel this level of despair and frustration because it isn't the same as the original. It's almost, unless I was a robot that I could be programmed with had a camera observing Van Gogh, even a robot would make some small errors along the way. So it's going to be different. And as soon as I take the original away, I start feeling a lot better. I'm like, yeah, it actually looks great. I love all the choices I made. And then you look at the original and you go, I would. So, and it's funny, and I see that on the Facebook page. I see people like, eventually I just had to give up. I know it's not done or it doesn't look great. And I'm looking, it looks fantastic. It looks great. So that's how all of us are, including Van Gogh. Van Gogh was generally quite upset with many of the works that he did. He gave them away to a lot of people because he sometimes would be like, I'm going to throw it away, or it's garbage, and people would be like, I'll take it. If you're going to throw it out, I'll have it. I think it's kind of cool, especially if he made a portrait of somebody and he was going to throw it out. They're like, hey, well, no one's ever painted my portrait before. Do you mind if I keep it? Right? And of course, those paintings are worth literally hundreds of millions of dollars today. So, if somebody ever offers to do your portrait and you're not happy with it, just put it on a shelf somewhere. Give it, a couple generations, and you never know. It could be the most expensive thing in your entire family's possession here. I'm just going to get rid of this really big. There's a big blob of yellow here. Just going to fix that. It's one of those things that I notice and I'm like, wow, when that is up on the wall, that big blob of yellow is going to get a giant shadow underneath it, and I'm just going to sit there looking at it going, I wish I had fixed that. And I often do fix, well, my own paintings I fix. I have this in my mind that with these classes, when it's over, I just walk away because I have my own paintings to make. What am I doing, Michael? Just let it go. And then as soon as you do that, you've got to fix. And my goodness. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for joining me, for painting along with me again. On Sunday, we're going to be painting Spider-Man, the original Spider-Man, created by Steve Ditko and Stan Lee. So we've painted Batman, Superman. We started a whole video game series in which we painted Raven from Fortnite. We're going to be painting Calamity from Fortnite on Video Game Day. I think that's in September. And then there's Wonder Woman coming down the pipeline, Wolverine. So there's some more comic book things for people who are into that. Stay tuned for all those. Click the subscribe button. Do it right now. Click the like button. There's hundreds of people who watch these episodes, and it would be great if even just 5% of them hit the like button and the subscribe button, right? Because over the next few weeks here, I'll cross the 10,000 subscriber mark, which is a big deal for me personally. That's half the size of a hockey rink full of people watching. So your subscription would help a great deal. If you want to leave a donation, those are also super helpful, because all of the camera equipment, all the facilities you see down here has all been provided from generous donations from people like yourself. So thank you so much. There's a link to PayPal below. If you want to send a check or a money order or e-transfer or whatever, contact me through my email through the Facebook group. and upload your version of today's group or today's painting to the Facebook group. I can't wait to see what people have created. So, usually I can sign off here. I'm gonna restart that for a second while this is restarting. I'll just kind of quickly mention, because I haven't had a chance, as I said, this is the 131st anniversary of Vincent Van Gogh's death. The prevailing theory is that Van Gogh shot himself in the stomach with a gun. More recent research has come to light that suggests possibly it was some children who were playing with a gun that accidentally went off, obviously shot Van Gogh, and rather than going to the police and telling them about this wound, he instead basically just, because I don't think he explicitly said how he died. He just said, like, it's my time, or I can't remember what his last words were. But so many people have thought, well, that's kind of, it's strange that there's a number of inconsistencies in the prevailing theory. So many people now believe that there was at least something else going on. The other thing, and I wish I can't switch to my computer view right now while this is on the fritz, but another thing that we really didn't talk about so much is the cutting of his ear, which would have been, I think it's this, it would have been his right ear, right? So, because we're looking at the mirror. So, yeah, so this is his right ear, the ear that we can see in the painting that has been covered. And there's a big question for a long time as to exactly what happened there. And was it the entire ear that was cut off, or was it a portion of the ear? And we talked about Lust for Life, the movie. Lust for Life is based on a book by Irving Penn. Irving Penn was a writer as well as a journalist, and he did a lot, like Lust for Life, the book he wrote is based on fact. He did a lot of research, and it was written in like the 1930s, I think. And so he actually went to he was still Van Gogh wasn't in ancient history. He was able to go back and talk to the actual doctor that treated Vincent Van Gogh, and made some notes that went into an archive that have since been were long lost. Even the Vincent Van Gogh Museum did not know for sure exactly. Oops, what's going on here? Did not know the official story until this woman wrote, who was also a journalist. This has just happened a few years ago.